Hello and welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to show you how I shot this image. Now that might just seem like a fairly normal picture of just some kiwi fruit, which I've got set up here, but actually it is quite involved to get it to look right. So let me just go through what I've got so far. So on this board I have a couple of pieces of kiwi fruit, one of which I've sliced relatively thinly, and the other piece I've just propped up with a piece of blue tack at the back here, just to keep it upright. Then I have already set up my camera on this tripod. This is a Canon 1DX Mark III with an 85mm 1.2 lens on the front, and also a 12mm extension tube, which will allow me to focus a little bit closer and yet still give me, with this lens combination, a good distance between the camera and the subject. As I tend to do in the studio, I have the camera tethered into Capture One software, which is running on this computer. Okay, so in order to create the image, what I'd like to do is actually light it from behind here, so that the translucent effect of this piece of kiwi fruit comes to the fore, and you can actually see the light through it. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a studio flash around here somewhere with a fairly large softbox on it. So I'll just go and get that now. So here we are. This is a Profoto D2 flash head with a 3-foot octabox softbox on the front of it. So I'll just take that up in the air a little. And like I said, I'm just going to light that from behind, from here somewhere, maybe a little lower than that. Just on the corner, something like that. Okay, so before I actually use the flash, as usual, what I will do is just take a test frame without triggering the flash, just to check that the studio lights aren't making any difference to the subject. So I'll just turn the flash trigger off and we'll just capture a frame. And you can see from that that there is nothing to speak of on there, so that's pretty good. I've just got this set to a rudimentary f8 at the moment, with a shutter speed of the flash sync speed for that camera. The ISO is set to 100. So with that test out of the way, we'll turn the flash trigger on and just take an exposure to get an idea of where we are. Okay, so looking at that, it's not bad. We're getting a part of the translucent effect that I wanted. This one's a bit dark. The focus is pretty good. I think I would probably prefer to change the aperture to make it the depth of field a bit deeper. So I'll change that to 11 to start with. Just take another one. And I'll just take the energy up on that flash by about a stop, I think. We'll just do another test. There we go, that's brought it a bit back to life. Okay. So with that done, we've got a bit of a starting point. There's a few things that I'd like to alter about that. I think the light is slightly in the wrong place. It needs to come round a bit more. So what I will do is just take it round the back a little. So maybe down a bit. to be careful I don't actually end up with this in the shot. I'll just check that through the viewfinder. It's just starting to encroach on the corner. So I'll just take that up a bit. Just bring that round. And we'll do another test. Okay. So that's coming along quite nicely. I think you should be able to see that there's actually a bit of flare which I've got in there, and you've just caught the corner of the light here. So we'll just address this flare first. So that's probably coming obviously from here. I wonder if I can just flag that off with my hand. Yes. So instead of just standing there with my hand in the way, I'll use a proper flag. Here we have one that I put together earlier. So this is just a piece of card, just on the end of a stand, to do the same job as I was doing with my hand. So we'll just check that that's more or less in the right place. It should be. Try that. There we go. Okay, so let me just show you. That is what we had before. You should be able to see that this is the flare that we were getting from the light. So with that flag in place, that has now disappeared. Okay, so one stage at a time. That's starting to get there. One of the things that we want to bring out with this image is just the amount of liquid or juice that is coming out of this fruit. Now, as it's lit at the moment, with most of the light coming from the back, you can't actually see very much of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this mirror to recycle some of the light back onto the subject again, so that it picks out the specular highlights that we'll get from the juice coming out of the kiwi. So this does take a little bit of practice to get it in the right place. In fact, what I might do is just add, I'll turn on the model light on that flash, which will enable me to see what I'm doing with the mirror. Yes, more or less. So somewhere around there. I'll just give that another go. Okay. So that's what we had before. That's what we've got with the mirror. So it's starting to get there, but I need to just add a bit more. So what I'm going to do is get this a bit closer. So with that in there, which I think is about there. There we go. So that's without it. In fact, what I'll do is just put a star on that one. And that's with the mirror in place. So it's blown this one out, but this one's quite nice. That's quite a nice image of that one. So I'll probably just put a star on that one as well. So in order to get this the right density compared with this one, I'll just move the mirror backwards so that I end up with a little less fill-in on another shot, like so. There we go. So that's got less fill-in now. Now I think we need to be somewhere in between. So what I'm going to do is just do another shot with this a little way in between the two. Like that. Yes, that's quite a nice one. So I'll just mark that one too. Okay. So from the capture side of things, that's about it. It's fairly straightforward. We've just got a fairly large softbox off to the rear, which is illuminating through the translucent fruit. And then to give a bit more depth to the front of the fruit, I'm just using a mirror just to recycle some of the light from there back onto the fruit again. And because there's a slight difference in exposure between the two, I've taken 2 or 3 different images which I'm going to glue together in Photoshop. And that's what I'm going to show you what I'm doing now. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. I've opened up the 3 images so we can just have a little look at those. So this is the first one where we didn't have the mirror in place at all. And then the second one, you can just see the edge of the mirror here. This one's possibly a little bright. That's not bad at all. And you can just see the highlights, the specular reflections that we're getting from that mirror, which is why I used a mirror and not a piece of white card. This one's down on exposure a little. Actually, it's still quite pleasant. That's quite a good picture in its own right. But I think a combination of all 3 would actually give us a very good result. So what I'm going to do, first of all, starting from the background image, I will just add these other 2 as layers. So select all, edit, copy, back to the base image, edit, paste. And you can see that that's pasted that in as another layer. And now just the same with this one. Select all, edit, copy, back to the base, edit, paste. Okay, so this has given me background, layer 1 and layer 2. And if I turn these on and off, you should be able to see the differences. There we go. So that's the base image. That's the one with the mirror relatively close in. That's the one with the mirror a bit further away. Right, so the first thing I think I would do is we'll just take that one out and we'll just have a look at this one. And I'll add a layer mask to that. But I'll add an inverse layer mask, which I can do by holding down the Alt key on the keyboard, like so. Now, wherever I paint in white, so if I just change my paintbrush, my foreground color to white, grab a paintbrush, it will now add this image. Let me show you what I mean. If I just pop that on there, for instance, very quickly. That has brought in that part from that image. I don't particularly want that, so what I can do is just swap this from white to black and just paint it out again. There we go. What I do want to use on this one is what it's done to this part of the fruit. So I'll go back to white and just paint this in, like so. And there we go. I've just caught the edge of this, so I'll just go back to black and maybe just increase the hardness of the brush and take it down in size a bit and just go back round because I don't want it to affect this part too much, like so. There we go. And again, if I just turn that on and off, you can see the difference that's made. Okay, and now if I turn on the top layer, And again, I will just add an inverse mask. So holding down the Alt key, add a mask, and just paint in white. Just resize my brush and make it quite a soft edge like we had before. And I'll just liven up the middle of this part of the fruit, like so. There we are. Okay. So you can see now, if I just turn these off, that's our base image. And this is what has happened with a little bit of manipulation. That's pretty good. Okay. Next and final thing, I think, would be just to add a crop. Just make that like so. In fact, I'm not too sure this is actually straight. So the first thing I will do is just go to straighten. And just using the background as a bit of a guide. There we go. And now we can pick, in fact, I'll pick my usual 16:9 as a ratio. Let's see where I'd like to put these. Something like that, I think, would be quite good. I don't usually mess about with the thirds to that degree because I don't really believe in it. I think in this case, something like that as a starting point. I like the idea of having all this dead space at the top. I think that's quite good. So I'll go with that. Like so. And I think finally what I will do is just make a stamp layer. So I'll just click in here to deselect all these, holding down the Shift key, the Control key, the Alt key, and press the E key. That will give me this, which is a combination of everything that is below it, which means I can still edit all these if I want to, but if I have any global editing, I can do it on this one. So with my stamp layer selected, I'll come up here to Selections, and we'll go for Elliptical. Holding down the Alt key will make me draw it from the center. So I'll go for an elliptical mask, something like that. I'd like to modify that with a feather. And again, I would like to just invert that. With that selected, go to Adjustments, Exposure, and I'll just take that down a bit at the edges just to add a bit of a vignette in the corners. There are lots of different ways to do this, but I quite like to do it this way because it does give you an awful lot of control. Just pop that down there somewhere, and you can see the difference that makes. Click on OK. Select, deselect, and there we go. And there we have it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that little demonstration. It gave you a little bit of a flavour of different ways to achieve the same thing within Photoshop. If you like seeing these sort of things, just click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next one.